Hello and welcome to the Pause It For Me podcast. My name's Andrew. I'm from Ottawa, Ontario. I'm a videographer slash editor, and I'm 12 years old at heart. And my goodness, am I enormously tired right now. Hannah?
I concur. I'm also tired right now.
Are you also 12 years old at heart?
Yeah. Well, I could relate to like Barbie because as a kid.
Hang on. Did we watch Barbie this week?
No, I wish.
Am I that tired that I forgot already?
I could relate to Barbie because I love the idea of being an adult woman. So.
Like the movie Barbie or just Barbie the doll?
Barbie in general.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we watched a movie, but I was just super tired, and I feel like I'm going to pass out at any second. So why don't I throw it over to you? Hannah, what's the first memory that you think of as a core memory when you think about watching movies as a child?
Well, I remember watching Back to the Future with my family, and I remember that being fun, like marathoning all three movies.
Why?
Just because those are great movies, and it was great to be able to see it for the first time. It's just a great movie that holds up, and, you know, it's just a nice experience to watch with other people, and it's cool to be able to watch them back to back and be like, oh, what's going to happen next? What about you? What's one of your core memories?
Well, thinking of the question, the first one that I thought of was watching Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and standing on the arm of our couch in the living room and imitating the scene where he sings like surfboards on his broomstick and then falls forward and swallows the snitch. Was that in the first one or is that in the second one? That's the first one, right?
It's got to be the first one because if you think about in one of the later books, spoilers for Harry Potter, Dumbledore gives him the golden snitch that he saved.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you have to open it like how you did in your first match. And that's because he like swallowed it or whatever.
Right.
It touched his mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. I'm starting to wake back up now. Okay. let's take it from the top. So I'm I almost said I'm Hannah. Okay, hang on.
You are Hannah.
I need another sip
I'm
of coffee.
you. We're the same person.
My name is Andrew, and this is Hannah, and we watch movies together.
We do.
As we continue through our list of movies from history that we missed out on, we've reached Plan 9 from Outer Space, but as Hannah said in the previous episode, kind of a little tired of this list here. So we're going to take a hiatus probably right after this episode. And we got some interesting content coming along the pipeline, and hopefully that works out, but I'm not going to spoil it yet. But for now, as soon as we finish Plan 9, we're going to put a pin in this list, and we're going to watch some other stuff that just strikes our fancy more in the moment to watch. We haven't gone to the movies to see anything new in a while.
We don't usually talk about the new movies we see, though.
Exactly. We leave that to Carl and Gabe on their podcast. Carl and Gabe go to the movie. Shout out to them.
Yeah, I'd totally give that a listen.
So I'm looking forward to talking about some newer stuff and some random stuff. But we're into October now, halfway through. And I'm interested to do kind of the same thing that we did last year, where we put out more episodes in October than we normally have. But we're already halfway through October, and you haven't put out a single one, so we got to get cracking here.
Yeah, we got to do a marathon. I have some ideas of some spooky movies I want us to marathon. So
yeah,
hopefully we can do episodes on that.
I've mentioned multiple times we have to watch Dracula because it stars Bela Lugosi in his most iconic role, the same man who basically played like an almost like parody version of that role.
Yeah.
In Plan 9, sort of, but we'll get to that.
That was really weird.
Yeah. So, Plan 9 from Outer Space came out in 1957. It was directed by Ed Wood, and if you've never heard of it, it is considered one of the worst movies ever made.
Right.
And I think that there's enough interesting content surrounding this movie that I didn't even I knew a little bit about it before going in, but I didn't bother doing any research because I think I'm just going to read the trivia fresh on mic here.
Sure.
Which is not what I normally do. Normally I pick like 2 or 3 pieces of trivia, vet them beforehand and make sure they're interesting. I think I'm just going to read as we go this time because I think it'll be that that interesting.
I would say in general, we're not as keen on it as some people. Like, I think a lot of
Keen on what?
Well, I'm going to say.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We do like so bad it's good movies sometimes.
Okay.
Some people seek it out. They're like, oh, I want to see all these terrible cult classic camp movies. But, you know, I feel like we've seen some of the big ones, like The Room.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say Plan 9 is another one of those. Maybe the OG. In terms
the OG
of
So Bad It's Good?
Yeah, where they play it and it had like a following and, you know, they would replay it every year and stuff like that. Because I feel like when we think about it now, it almost feels like a new phenomenon, but no, it's been around for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
All right.
So, as we jump into it, I'll read the logline as I typically do. Evil aliens attack Earth and set their terrible Plan 9 into action. As the aliens resurrect the dead of the Earth, the lives of the living are in danger.
Okay, I don't get it.
You don't get that logline, or you don't get the plot?
Yeah. So
okay, go ahead.
They're like, okay, we know that humans are going to develop a deadly bomb that will put us at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to get their attention. So we're going to raise people from the dead. But we're also going to kill the humans that we tell about it because like it needs to be some kind of warning that we're here. And it's like, I don't get it. Why are you raising people from the dead and like what's the point? See, I just don't get it.
I think that speaks to the mental state that I was in while watching this movie and trying desperately not to fall asleep. Because I was hearing all these plot elements and I was like, oh, yeah, makes perfect sense. No, yeah, I mean, aliens, yeah, zombies, and yeah, bomb. Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah, because it's like they let them into the ship and they're like, these are the only humans that are going to be in the ship and they're going to be dead soon. And it's like, okay, so you're telling them why you're trying to get their attention by raising people from the dead, but you're also going to kill them. So what's the
I don't know.
point?
I don't know.
I don't
well, to start,
I don't think this movie is supposed to make sense.
I thought it was actually a pretty interesting concept that aliens come to Earth and they're like, humans are stupid and they're going to develop the technology for this bomb faster than they can develop the understanding of why it's bad to have this technology. So you have to come to Earth to stop them because they're going to accidentally destroy the universe because they're so dumb. I think that's a hilarious concept.
I think the concept is hilarious. The execution is confusing.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And the reason why this is considered such a bad movie is you know, partially for those reasons, but also just like a lot of the sets are just cheap. The effects are cheap and they're not convincing.
Do you see how much the budget was?
No, what?
Okay.
Is that what, when just before we hit record, you were looking at your phone, you were like, oh, that makes so much sense?
No, another thing, but I'll explain that.
Okay, please
as
do.
well. The budget, and keep in mind, this is in 1950s, and this is like, you know, a Hollywood production film where they have to hire actors and, you know, pay people and use film, which is expensive.
Yep.
$60,000.
In the 1950s.
And to put it in perspective, Robert Rodriguez did it super on the cheap in the 90s where he could switch it to VHS. They couldn't do that. He did it for like $7,000. So they basically did it for the bare minimum that you could make a movie in the 50s, the $60,000. And it shows.
I mean, making a movie is hard.
It is hard.
You know, it's just like, I don't think that this movie is nearly as bad as it gets a reputation for, strictly because the film is exposed properly.
Yeah.
You can hear the dialogue from the actors, you know, like, for the most part, basically every single shot is in focus. Like, even that much is like, you can get that wrong.
You can, but in terms of widely distributed films, it's lower on the scale of quality.
Sure, but this is a concept that I've talked about in the past. Is you can have a movie that's, you know, well shot, well edited, written in a cohesive manner, but is super boring.
Yeah, that's true.
And then on the flip side, you can have a movie that's shot like crap, acted like crap, the writing's crap, but it's hilarious and super entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say this movie was hilarious, but I was entertained enough by it.
It was engaging. The
Me
dialogue,
falling asleep notwithstanding. I think I was just really tired today.
of course,
Didn't get enough sleep.
probably. Well, the dialogue was terrible, but that kind of added to the hilariousness of it. But I don't know if they were self-aware, maybe a little bit, but
absolutely. There was a lot to like about this.
Sure.
And even with all the bad effects, like you can see the strings that the alien ships are on, and you can tell when one of them is lit on fire. The way that the fire forms, you could tell that the alien ship is only like 4 inches across.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I found all that so charming, because I get the craft of filmmaking, and it takes me out of the film in a nice way. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you see like a Hollywood movie now and the effects look bad, like they're CGI, it takes you out of the film in a bad way, because you're like, I'm supposed to be invested in this, and now I'm just thinking about how crap the CGI looks. But with Plan 9 from Outer Space, I look at that and it makes me think like, oh, someone's hand reached over to that prop and lit it on fire with like a match or something. And then it puts this image in my head of somebody working hard on this film, trying to get the effects right, and like a little crew putting it together. I like that visual in my head.
Well, it has like a very kitsch, toy-like quality.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the energy that Wes Anderson was channeling through Asteroid City. He purposely made a lot of his effects kitsch and sort of a 50s sci-fi-esque trope, and I feel like maybe he got some inspiration from this movie and other 1950s sci-fi films.
Mm-hmm.
That felt very similar to me, especially in the beginning of Asteroid City and the end of Asteroid City. There's Bryan Cranston narrating,
right. Yeah.
And that felt very similar to in this movie.
Yeah.
Well,
I thought this movie was entertaining.
It certainly was.
And, I mean, it was stupid, but
it was definitely stupid, especially the ray gun, where they it was clearly like almost like a toy water pistol. And
she's like banging against it, like, it's not working.
Yeah, it's jammed.
Yeah.
And he has a ray gun in his holster, and he's like, "Someone do something!" That was a close one. And then he pulls it out like 5 seconds later, and then controls the guy. And it's like, well, why didn't you just do that?
I guess we'll just have to ask Ed Wood.
I know.
Another thing that I really liked about this, and I'm not sure who to blame for this. I know blame isn't quite the right word, but we were only able to find a colorized version of this.
Yeah.
Because it was shot in black and white, and anytime I've seen clips from it in the past, it was in black and white. And when this movie started, it was in color, and I was like, well, clearly it's colorized. And some of the color scenes look pretty good. The scenes with the aliens in their purple jumpsuits or whatever, those look pretty good. Other scenes look really bad, and their skin tones look terrible. But this movie uses color in a way that not a lot of other movies use color or colorization. And they use it mostly with skin tones. And
sure.
I just slagged off the skin tones 5 seconds ago, but that's in scenes where they're supposed to look normal. There's other scenes where the skin tones of all the regular characters look normal, but then not only the skin tone, but also the clothes of the zombified characters are colorized in a completely different way. And it really makes them stand out and makes them look different. And I'm like, in 2023, with all our digital effects technology, I still don't see anyone really doing selective coloring on whole characters in that way.
I think it's more done through wardrobe cues. Like you would have like the protagonist in light colors and, the antagonist in dark colors, that kind of thing.
Sure, but like, as another example, so I'm talking about like the Tor Johnson character right now, the big guy.
Mm-hmm. The lieutenant, yeah.
Sure,
Clay,
yeah,
Lieutenant Clay.
Yeah. And then Vampira or Vampirella, whatever her name is.
Vampira.
Yeah, Vampira. Yeah. Her character similarly is like her character has color, her lips have color, and her fingernails had color, but her skin was uncolored, was black and white. But she's in the same frame as other characters whose skin looks normal and is colorized.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really nice.
That's like Celebrity Skin, where it
The
was
music video by Hole, you're saying.
Yeah, it was shot in black and white, and they colored
colorized
it in, and it gave it like sort of a surrealist look.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. There's another part where one of the aliens gets punched in the face, and when the punch connects, it turns his skin green, almost like, you know, when somebody blushes, their cheeks turn red, and then after like a minute or whatever, it, you know, the flushness goes away, and they go back to
I found that
color.
to be effective. Yeah.
He gets punched in the face and his skin turns green, and he kind of like recovers a bit, and as he recovers from the punch, his skin goes back to normal color. I was like, that was awesome. That was cool. This is the worst movie ever made, and it's doing cool stuff like that. I like that.
Well, I think, you know, to say it's the worst movie ever made, it's, you know, it's the same with, you know, The Room being the worst movie ever made kind of thing. It's just a declarative title. I think the worst movie ever made would be a movie that you couldn't even sit through. This is a movie you could sit through.
Like Wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah.
Audience members out there, please never go watch Wavelength. It's terrible.
I think it's worth watching like 5 minutes of just to see what it's about. But
no. It's a short film, but as far as short films go, it's pretty long, and it's literally just one shot of an apartment zooming in on a window while this high-pitched sound gets higher and higher pitched and gets louder and louder and more annoying.
Okay, but if you're a film buff, I think it's worth checking out just to see what it's about.
No, this is pretentious. This is dumb.
Of course it's pretentious.
I disagree with the idea that Wavelength is worth watching in any way, shape, or form.
I'm not
Just
saying
putting that out there.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it
good because it's not good.
It is of interest in how, in the history of cinema, how they were exploring with new techniques.
What was that? What new techniques? Tell me the techniques.
Just breaking down like narrative construction and just like redefining what a movie could be. You know?
I disagree for the record, but I'll let it go. So I'll jump into a little piece of trivia here. And this is one that I actually know. I'm not going to read it out. And I'll start with a question. Do you, Hannah, know?
Do you?
Do you understand Plan 9? Do you? Do you, Hannah, know what was going on with Bela Lugosi in this movie?
So that was the part that I read on the Wikipedia.
Okay, so, can I tell it?
Yeah.
Okay, so from what, and then you can fill in the gaps if I get it wrong. From what I understand, Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood kind of became friends. They were collaborators. They collaborated a couple of times. And my understanding is that Ed Wood filmed some shots out of context of Bela Lugosi walking around in the Dracula cape, just kind of doing random stuff without any concrete use for that footage yet. Then Bela Lugosi died, and Ed Wood decided to craft a film around that footage, or at least incorporate that footage into a film, and get another actor to wear the Dracula cape and just cover his face the entire time to try and tie in with this footage of Bela Lugosi, just kind of like taking 10 steps in a field next to a couple of gravestones and then raising his arms and then turning around and going back into the trees, which ended up causing some incredibly hilarious and terrible problems with continuity with regards to day and night, because there were so many shots and scenes in this movie cutting constantly between shots that were very clearly supposed to be nighttime immediately up against shots that were very clearly filmed during the daytime. And I found that hilariously terrible and very charming.
Yeah. Well, it's also like they would use the shot of him walking, but then they would like reverse it and have him walking away, and like just the narration trying to make sense of it. They're like, this man rose up, and he's literally just standing there.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't think he had a single line in the whole movie.
Yeah, well, and I didn't know that it was just random footage that they slapped together, and I was like, oh, this makes just so much sense, because in like, he doesn't have a single line, and it's him like standing over like a gravesite, and then him just like outside like smelling a flower, and he like picks up this random flower, and they're like, it's a rose or something. I'm like, that's That's not a rose. So it's like they didn't even
I
like
think
try to match
they
it
might have
up.
been being metaphorical with that
Maybe.
one, but
For sure. Yeah.
so did I get anything wrong? What version of that story did you read?
I mean, you're probably even more correct. It just says that
More mouth noises, please, just to fill the time.
just to fill it.
A couple more.
Boop doo doo doo.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. That should just be the rest of the podcast, just mouth noises.
It also posthumously bills Bela Lugosi before his death in 1956. He shot footage of Lugosi for another unfinished film and inserted it into Plan 9.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even like I said he's in the Dracula cape, but he's in the full Dracula costume. He's got like the necklace and everything.
Yeah, he does the signature Dracula thing of like covering his face with a cape.
Yeah, and he like, raises his arms up like Batman in the 1989 Batman movie.
Well, I'm sure
ridiculous.
The Batman was copying Bela in terms of using a cape. Like I feel like Batman does the same sort of thing where he covers his face as the Dark Knight.
Yeah, it depends on which interpretation of Batman.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's check out a couple other pieces of trivia here. So, contrary to popular belief, the detective who points his gun at himself several times did it deliberately. The actor wanted to see if Ed Wood would notice. He didn't. You remember that, right?
Yeah, we were making fun of that. He's
like scratching his nose with his gun almost.
He kept on like pointing it at his own chest, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally scratched myself with my gun. Like, what?
So there's a mystery that we need to solve here.
Okay.
With regard to the version of the film that we watched. So obviously we watched a colorized version.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll come right out and say it, but I'll say it very quietly so that the authorities don't hear. We downloaded this movie illegally on the internet. Okay, I don't think the police heard me, so I think we're okay.
Oh no. Good. Ed Wood isn't going to get his money.
Hannah, quiet. So, all that to say, there was some weird stuff going on at 2 points in this movie.
Okay.
In one spot, I think the Tor Johnson character was killed and he fell down dead next to a gravestone that had two names superimposed onto the gravestone.
Oh, yeah.
But the way they were superimposed didn't look like they were superimposed in the 50s. It looked more like they were superimposed with like 80s or 90s software.
Yeah.
It looked too new.
And it said like Paula, and I was like, isn't that the wife's name of the pilot?
I don't know. But then even weirder, later in the bedroom of the pilot and the pilot's wife, there's some pictures on the wall, and there's like 1 picture, 2 picture, 3 picture, and then the second picture looks completely out of place. It's a photo of a couple that looks like it was taken in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like
inexplicably, it was just like a modern
but
photo.
I'm not saying it's just a photo on the wall in the frame that looks like it was taken in the 80s. I'm saying it was a photo that looks like it was taken in the 80s, superimposed over top of whatever was originally in the frame.
Yeah.
And it's in the shot, and then they cut away from it to a reaction shot or whatever, and then they cut back, and it's gone.
And it's just the original
it's
flowers.
whatever was originally in the frame.
That's so weird.
So I'm gonna scroll a little bit, and I'm gonna try and find to see if that's mentioned in the trivia. If anyone else has seen Plan 9 from Outer Space out there, please weigh in and try and solve this mystery for us, because I was left extremely confused by that.
I feel like almost maybe it's like whoever uploaded it, it was like a prank. Like, I'm just going to insert this in here.
That's what I thought too. Like wherever the torrent came from or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, someone thought it would be funny.
Or they just inserted it into like a film reel that ended up becoming like the go-to print that gets reprinted. I don't know.
I guess.
How bizarre.
Another piece of trivia. Ed Wood always claimed that this film was his pride and joy.
Sure.
That's
It created the most legacy for him, right? I mean, what other movies did he do? I have no idea.
He did a movie called Glenn or Glenda.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
I don't remember if he played like a transgender person or just a cross-dresser or something. But I watched the movie Ed Wood, where Johnny Depp plays Ed Wood in a biopic, but I only watched the first like half hour of it because I wasn't really getting into it.
Right.
That doesn't have anything to do with anything, so I don't know why I brought it up, but there's that fact.
I feel like because I listened to You Must Remember This, and there's a whole series about Bela Lugosi, and I feel like it goes into further detail about his friendship with Ed Wood and about Ed Wood dressing in women's clothing.
Right.
Like traditionally women's clothing. So
Right. I heard that after Plan 9, he made mostly pornography.
interesting. I guess that's where the money was for him.
I suppose.
As in terms of a filmmaker, he's not exactly known for his striking cinema techniques. So pornography, you can just kind of get away with shooting it however. Yeah.
I suppose. Another piece of trivia. While some have speculated the flying saucers were paper plates or hubcaps, they were really 1/48th scale flying saucer plastic model kits from toy manufacturer Paul Lindbergh. One was modified with a wooden block to represent the square base of the flying saucer, which lands in the graveyard. So that gave me a stroke of inspiration. I would love to film a movie that's just like completely serious, and then there's one scene where one character needs to like take a flight or whatever, and we cut from like them, in the airport terminal and then getting on the plane, and then all of a sudden it's just a shot of like a toy plane,
Yeah, a toy plane.
but like my hand is holding the plane, and I'm then going into a microphone being like,
That's a great idea.
and then the rest of the movie after that is just completely serious.
I think that'd be really funny.
I think that would be awesome. I feel like Wayne's World did something like that, and maybe I'm subconsciously plagiarizing it.
It could be, yeah.
But a whole movie with like, it's completely serious, but anytime there's a transitionary shot, it's just like something crazy and kooky like that.
Well,
I think that would be funny.
That might fit with your next project that you're hoping to do that involves sound effects.
You
could play with sound
suppose.
effects.
If I get a chance to do that project, that would be great. But
sure, why not?
the current project is just wrapping up, and that's if you're a consistent listener, you probably know that we've been taking longer and longer breaks in between episodes. It's because we're still just busy wrapping this project up. We're both in our busy seasons for work, but I'm hoping now that we're into the swing of October, things are starting to calm down a bit. Things are wrapping up. We'll be able to chunk out some extra episodes. And,
chunk it out.
We'll chunk it. We'll chunk it real good.
Yeah, I'm excited to move into, all the cozy time movies and, Christmas and all that. So that'll be really exciting.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll have time to watch some Oscar movies.
Well,
maybe.
Whatever.
The good ones.
Oscars are kind of whatever.
No, I know.
Footage from the same shoot that produced Bela Lugosi's performance in this movie was meant to be used to make another film, The Ghoul on the Moon.
Nice.
When Ed Wood went to retrieve the film, he found it had been ruined, so the new movie was scrapped. It's ruined.
When it was first released, it was named like Grave Robbers from Space or something.
Plan 9?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There's some... If you look up online, if you ask when it was released, it was technically released in 1956, but it was released to the general public in 1959.
Oh, interesting.
And then aired on TV in the 60s, which makes me think the version we watched, the color version with the narrator at the beginning and the end, might have been the TV version, just to kind of that.
Oh,
if I had to
very
guess,
long.
Like to bookend for commercial length on like a television broadcast, maybe.
Right. It was only about an hour and less than an hour and 20.
I mean, thank goodness, because a terrible movie shouldn't also be a long movie.
Yeah.
What's the need?
Enough. Well, two last pieces of trivia here. Ed Wood attempted to make an epic film on a shoestring budget. His ideas tended to be too expensive to put on film, but he attempted it anyway. I actually like that attitude.
I mean, you might as well go for it. Like, at least people are still talking about this movie this many years later, even if it's not technically good.
And that's one of my philosophies when it comes to not only just filmmaking, but just, doing creative projects in general. It's like, if you ever come to the point where you're saying, oh, I could do this, but it would be too hard, or it would be too much money. You know, it would be too much work. It'd take too much time. It's like, hey, you know what else would be less work and less time and less money? Just not making the movie at all.
Yeah.
So if that's what you're after, just don't do it.
Just don't do it. Well, that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Is they never do anything. They say, you know, I'm an aspiring artist. I'm inspiring to do this. And it's like, no, just go and do it.
I'm an aspiring coffee drinker.
And now you are a coffee drinker.
I did it.
You did that.
And then last one here. The screenplay was written in less than 2 weeks.
And it shows.
Yeah. Well, the movie that I'm putting out in a little bit, I wrote that screenplay in 6 days. And I think that also kind of shows.
Well, yes and no. You can say that you wrote it in 6 days, but you also did some rewrites.
Yeah, like one.
And you collaborated with the actors on set about perhaps tweaking some dialogue or adding additional dialogue when it felt like that was necessary.
I was just trying not to get bogged down with it. I was like,
maybe you're an Ed Wood style filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should watch his biopic with Johnny Depp because maybe there's a bit of a kinship there. Yeah. But I was just trying not to be like, this is my magnum opus and I'm going to spend 3 years writing it. Yeah. I was like, let's just get something down on paper and just move forward.
No, I hear you. I mean, it's better, like, if that's what you want to be doing with your life is making narrative film, you might as well make something and have something to show for it to propel yourself to other things instead of just saying you want to do it.
I just wanted to make something fun.
Sure.
And it ended up being mostly fun. Pretty stressful, but...
Yeah, but that's what it's like.
Happens. Yeah.
Like, if you pursue any creative pursuit that you do as a hobby and try to make it like a career, it's going to be stressful and hard work. Like, you just have to love it. Like, my job, I get to photograph people, which is great, but it's also very hard.
Right. Well, it meant a lot to me that you were there every step of the way and helping me along with it and being my second set of eyes, second set of ears, and always championing my intentions and progress and stuff. And it was very helpful to have you there and to never be like, I don't think you should do this idea. You were always like, yeah, if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. So,
well, that's generally my attitude to life. However, I mean, if I had some concerns about certain aspects of things, I would be like, hey, I don't think this is working and here's the reason why. Not just like completely shutting it down.
For sure. So. Well, it's the fair way to do it.
Yeah.
So Plan 9 from Outer Space. Rating? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you like me?
Yeah.
Did you hate me?
I'll like you forever.
Oh, that's good.
It was more enjoyable to watch than War of the Worlds.
It really was.
Even though War of the Worlds was technically a better movie, and in the terms of,
I guess,
tech.
Yeah.
It was better shot, but it was less interesting, and it was like a similar story, kind of. I couldn't help but make comparisons to Night of the Living Dead, which came a couple years later, also a small indie low budget thing, but they did it in a way better way, and also had zombies and it was slow moving people.
Yeah, well,
but they created suspense and action and stuff a lot better. Again,
like, even though this isn't the worst movie ever made, it's still like it's worth watching to give you perspective on every other movie.
Yeah.
You know, because like you watch a movie and you're like, this movie's bad. It sucks.
It's like, oh, I could do better. And it's like, no, you couldn't.
Look at even worse movies and see how much worse it could be. And that'll give you not only a more of an appreciation for that movie that you thought sucked, but an even better appreciation for movies that you think are awesome. You know,
like, for sure.
It's hard making movies, and to make something that's even halfway decent is hard. To make something that is great is even harder, and to make something that's like a certified classic and crowd pleaser for decades to come is like a lightning strike.
Yeah. The lightning strike is a good way to put it. You see those reunions of classic films and they're like, at the time we thought like nothing was going to happen. They're like, oh, Star Wars? Oh, this is going to suck. No one's going to watch it.
It's very strange.
Yeah. And it's like, you just never know what's going to hit and strike a chord with people. So don't even like try, like, don't make that your sole purpose. Just make something that you want to make, you know?
Yeah.
So
rating?
it's very watchable, but it's not a good movie. And it's certainly, in the way that some movies are kind of bad, where you're like, oh, but I still love it. I don't think I love it, but it was okay. It was okay. So like 5 out of 10.
5. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10.
Sure.
And thus a 3 out of 5. But maybe I'm giving it more credit than is due because I was kind of falling asleep towards the end, and maybe maybe my brain filled in some gaps of like moments that were actually bad, but my brain was like, oh yeah, it's totally normal. Just carry on, keep going. So 6 out of 10.
It's like Jerry thinking of a funny joke while he's sleeping.
Yeah. It's exactly.
The flames or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, the next episode that you listen to might not actually be about a movie. We've had guests on the podcast before, but each time they were to come on to talk about a specific movie. But we're gearing up to hopefully do some interviews with some filmmakers, now
local
that local filmmakers in the Ottawa area. Now that we're getting more immersed in that community and that culture, we're meeting new people. I'm excited to pick the brains of some of those people and just discuss the craft of low budget indie filmmaking. And
for sure.
Hopefully you all are in for the ride on that one, because I don't know how many we'll do. We'll see how many people are interested in it. If you're a local filmmaker in Ottawa and you want to come on our podcast to talk about some stuff, reach out.
Sure,
because we'd love to talk to you.
Love to.
But in between those, hopefully we'll still be able to watch some spooky themed stuff to fit the Halloween season. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to it. What are you most looking forward to?
Well, I mean, it'll be nice to get to know some other creative types in the area, for sure. And I can't stop raving about spooky movies. I've been watching spooky movies on my own, like the last little while, just like...
Without me?
Yeah. Like, I'm in the middle of watching Death Becomes Her. Right. I'm kind of on
Is that spooky? Yeah. I know it has death in the title, but...
Yeah. Well, I tend to lean towards dark comedies as like a go-to genre. And I would say like a lot of the movies I've been watching recently are like spooky, dark comedies. But it's not something we've been talking about on the podcast. But that's just been a fun little thing I've been doing this October season. So... Mm-hmm. It'll be fun to watch more of those, and I definitely have a list of a bunch that I'm anxious to see with you, so that'll be cool.
Well, I want you to get excited to watch Dracula because it's one of the most famous movies ever made, and you haven't seen it.
I mean,
you need to see Bela Lugosi in his prime.
Of course. Yeah. As the audience may or may not know, I can't remember if I mentioned it on the pod,
I'm sure
is that I took a vampire class in college, and we watched a lot of vampire content and learned about the history of vampirism. So,
but not the most famous vampire movie ever.
No. We watched clips of it, but we didn't watch the whole movie. We did watch the whole movie of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula because the teacher said it was closer in adaptation to the book, which it was.
Sure, but less culturally significant.
I suppose,
indeed.
Well, I'm interested to see it because I obviously know a lot about vampirism and the tropes, and I've read the novel and stuff, so I'll be interested to see what that adaptation is like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So... thanks so much for listening, and tune in next time for another exciting episode of Pause It For Me.